His wife had explicitly warned Dave not to let their young son play alone on the lawn in the front yard. "You never know what kind of people are lurking out there," she said, but Dave did not heed her advice. From his bedroom window, he had to watch as the garbage collector lured his son onto the street with a toy. The man grinned and lifted the boy, then disappeared behind the fence in the blink of an eye. Dave couldn't get downstairs fast enough. After the series of problems he and his wife had been through, he couldn't risk getting into more trouble with her. Moreover, it was his child, one of the few reasons why he got out of bed in the morning. He sprinted across the lawn, hoping it wasn't too late. His breath caught as he turned the corner. Dave Palmer was 32 when he and his wife Malaya had their first child. Life was supposed to get better now. They both had great jobs and had just moved into their dream house. But their love life seemed to deteriorate from year to year, and even the birth of a baby didn't seem to fix the problem. It wouldn't be long before the two reached their breaking point. The residents of Kansas City had just moved to Brookside Park, where the incident occurred. Kansas had always been a peaceful home for them, and their previous neighborhood had the best security in the area. But the couple couldn't deny that their house felt a bit too cramped for their lifestyle. With their son on the way, it was best to move to a bigger home. If only they knew what they were getting themselves into. Dave worked as a software developer for a local technology company. As the newly appointed head of the technical department, he mostly worked from home. Unlike Malaya, a legal assistant who commuted to the city every day. The couple was supposed to be happy. Everyone insisted that they should be, considering how much they had achieved and how much they had ahead of them. But the crackling fire that had brought them to tie the knot in the first place was now just a flickering flame. This incident would be the final straw. Dave and Malaya had always talked about starting a large family. They had both grown up as only children in their respective families and knew how lonely it can be without siblings. They didn't want that for their baby, so they vowed to have as many children as possible. The encounter with the plumber would show them the true nature of the world. Dave and Malaya started trying to conceive a baby right after their wedding. It didn't take long for little Carrie to be born, and the parents were more than happy. Dave, working from home, spent his days with his wife and child, relishing the blessing in his hands. But soon, a dark cloud would loom over this happy family. When Malaya's maternity leave came to an end, problems arose. In her conversations with Dave, she expressed feeling torn between the desire to advance her career and raising her son, feeling like she was abandoning Carrie. Although she went back to work, she detested leaving the house. This bitterness was the beginning of their problems, not only with her husband, but also with her colleagues and friends.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
Dave and Malaya started arguing every evening about their careers. Malaya, who had the better salary of the two, was considering quitting her job altogether to raise Carrie. But Dave thought that was a reckless decision. Aside from the fact that Malaya had worked so hard to get where she was and couldn't just throw it all away, there were numerous bills in the house that couldn't be paid with his salary alone. The two had also moved into one of the largest houses in the neighborhood, which was no small feat. Just paying the mortgage would empty Dave's account before even touching their savings. Dave voiced his thoughts, and Malaya listened and agreed to continue her work. But the wound was already festering. It wouldn't be long before the damage became irreparable. Weeks turned into months, and eventually Carrie turned 2 years old. The relationship between his parents had deteriorated greatly, and the little boy was the only reason the two were still together. Malaya still commuted to work every day, leaving all the household chores to Dave, who usually called a cleaning lady and a gardener to take care of everything. Then he noticed something that had never been there before. Usually, the cleaning staff would finish their work and place the garbage bags in the front yard. From there, Dave would bring them down the driveway when he came home in the afternoon. This way, the garbage could be picked up by the garbage truck. But this month, there was no garbage to pick up in the evenings, even though the cleaning staff had put it out in the afternoon. Dave couldn't help but wonder what was going on. If only he knew what was happening behind his back. In conversation with one of his neighbors, Dave learned that a new garbage truck usually drove by every afternoon, collecting garbage bags throughout the neighborhood. The father was excited to hear this. He even learned the name of the garbage collector and looked forward to meeting the man who took this annoying task off his hands. He had no idea what was about to happen. Dave also shared his newfound knowledge with Malaya in the evening. Even though the fire between them had burned out, she still listened and expressed her opinion on the matter. "It makes your job even easier," she said in an emotionless tone as she sat in front of a mirror, wiping off her makeup. "You like it when everything is easy, don't you?" Dave was speechless. Dave had never seen divorce as the solution to his problems, but rather the beginning of many new problems. He believed in sticking through things and still loved his wife enough to work on their marriage. Dave pushed those negative thoughts out of his mind. He continued to fight and search for a better solution to their marital problems. He and Malaya were already seeking advice from a professional. A good start. But something else was happening on the streets of their neighborhood, something the two were unaware of. The new garbage collector, Tucker, was already making his rounds through the front yards of the community. Every afternoon, it appeared, collecting the filled garbage bags from Dave's doorstep and taking them to the garbage truck. But Dave wasn't the only one who took notice of the sanitation worker. His son, 2-year-old Carrie, loved the sound of the garbage truck, the rumbling and clattering, as well as all the flashing warning lights. He would excitedly run to the window every time. He would jump up, wave, and shout, "Truck!" at the top of his lungs. Dave believed that Carrie's fascination was with the garbage truck. Carrie had always loved cars and had an impressive collection of vehicles in his toy basket. But the boy's attention went beyond just tires and engines. Although the loud and flashing garbage truck fascinated the little boy, it was actually the new garbage collector who intrigued him even more. The boy admired him more than the truck itself. Eventually, Carrie started waving at Tucker, the sanitation worker, who always smiled and waved back. Dave saw this as a beneficial interaction, without being aware of the sanitation worker's intentions. But the concerned father would soon find out the truth, and when he did, he was speechless. But what did the new garbage collector really have in mind? Why seek the friendship of a young child? Among the things Carrie loved most were trucks and Legos. Dave and Malaya made sure he didn't miss out on anything and constantly bought him toys, mainly to hide their arguments from their son. Little did they know that supporting their son's favorite toys would lead them down a path they had never envisioned for their small family and their relationship. When Dave noticed that Carrie loved both the garbage truck and Tucker, the garbage collector, he made an effort to introduce them. He made sure Carrie stood by the window of his room every Tuesday afternoon, and when Tucker passed by, they would wave at each other. But Dave had no idea what he had started. He was too preoccupied with his marital problems and worries to notice the small details of their interactions. Dave was still trying to work on his relationship with Malaya. He was now earning enough money to keep up with her and wanted to revisit their conversation about her being a homemaker. That was the most important thing to him at the time. He thought that fulfilling this one wish for his wife would help them overcome their problems and rebuild their family. Malaya had always wanted to spend more time with Carrie, and this would finally be the perfect opportunity for her to do just that. And she would also be glad to shed the label of a homemaker. But before Dave talked to her about it, he wanted to share Carrie's newfound interest in garbage trucks and Tucker the sanitation worker with her. He believed she would be interested in what their son was up to, and it seemed like a good starting point for the other conversation. Usually, Dave and Malaya disagreed on many things. No matter how trivial, most of their conversations always seemed to end in an argument. However, that wasn't the case when it came to their son. Whenever Carrie's name came up, the atmosphere shifted. Malaya seemed calmer and would usually listen to what Dave had to say. Anything involving their son interested her. When Carrie was involved, the couple usually communicated well. Both knew that their little son was the only remaining glue holding their relationship together. Whenever something good or bad happened to the 2-year-old in Malaya's absence, Dave would immediately let her know. But this time, she wouldn't be as understanding as usual when it came to their son. Dave shared what Carrie had been up to lately, thinking that Malaya would be just as impressed as she usually was when Carrie learned a new skill or developed a new interest. But he was incredibly wrong. Instead of supporting their son's newfound interest, Malaya issued a warning to her husband. Was she right in what she said? This time, the mother was concerned. She warned Dave to never take his eyes off the boy, no matter the reason. "You never know what kind of people are out there," she said. But Dave didn't want to heed her warning. He was sure that everything would be fine. He had no reason to think otherwise, but Malaya said what she said for a reason. There were reports of kidnappings nationwide, and Malaya saw a great danger for their son, who was the most precious thing in the world to her. But Dave saw it as an overreaction. From what he had seen, their neighborhood was even safer than the last one, and all the neighbors knew each other, so it would be impossible for someone to try something like that. Or would it? Carrie would usually go outside every day to walk around on the well-kept lawn and collect insects. His mornings were exclusively dedicated to this activity. Dave saw no reason to intervene, let alone change such an essential part of their son's development. In his mind, the boy needed to experience these things, and he wouldn't let Malaya's overreaction hinder his progress. Usually, from his office next to the living room, Dave would look out and watch Carrie running across the front lawn. The front doors were generally wide open, so he could rush back in immediately if anything went wrong. Being seemingly always close to his son, Dave had no worries, but this day would change everything. It would force him to understand what his wife was trying to say. On that fateful day, Dave had only gone upstairs for a second. He needed to retrieve some documents for one of his clients. Carrie was playing outside, but Dave wasn't worried. He would only be gone for a few seconds. In that time, nothing could possibly go wrong. Could it? That's when he heard it. He was busy in his filing cabinet when he heard the rumbling of the garbage truck outside. At first, he thought it might be one of his neighbors driving a compressor sports car. But this sound was sharper and hoarser. It was the noise a huge object with a massive engine would make, and Dave should have known better than to rely on his tired mind. In the back of his mind, Dave knew it was the garbage truck, but it didn't make sense, as the day was only approaching noon, and the truck usually came in the afternoon. But that wasn't all. With his thoughts completely scattered, Dave forgot a crucial detail of the day, and it was something he would never forget again. The garbage truck usually only came on Tuesdays, but today was Thursday, something Dave would have known if he hadn't been so distracted by marital problems and his thoughts. But he was so focused on finding his files that he couldn't stop believing that something was wrong. It wasn't until his son stopped making noise that he realized he had made a mistake. Carrie had been laughing outside for a few seconds, and Dave subconsciously knew from the experience of the past few weeks that it was because he was excited to see his favorite garbage man. At least, that's what he thought. But suddenly there was nothing but complete silence. Dave froze for a moment, took a moment to recognize the danger in the absence of a sound. Then he rushed to his bedroom window. What the hell was going on down there? Dave's gaze fell on the man who had stepped out of the truck. He was wearing the usual garbage man attire, but there was something different today. These were not the usual gestures of a garbage man. The man was waving a yellow Lego brick in front of Carrie's eyes, and it wasn't Tucker, the man who usually picked up Dave's garbage bags. This was someone he had never seen before. The colorful toy fascinated the little boy, who was captivated by such things. He reached for it, and the man quickly and seemingly friendly scooped him up, saying something nice. Dave couldn't believe what he was seeing. In that moment, he forgot everything. His client, the paperwork, his arguments with his wife, they all disappeared. He could only think about getting to his son. With everything Dave and Malaya were going through, Dave couldn't let anything happen to their son. Carrie was the key to improving their marriage, and both knew it. But he was also Dave's world. The little boy was the only happiness left for the miserable father. He couldn't let the one thing that meant the world to him suddenly be lost. The father ran out of the house faster than his feet could carry him, and in a matter of seconds, he was on the lawn. The distinct rumble of the garbage truck was quite close. If he hurried, he could still reach the garbage truck safely before it disappeared with his son. He summoned his last bit of strength. Dave raced around the corner and nearly fell over when he saw what he saw. Right in front of his property were a couple of garbage workers. One of them had Carrie in his arms, and the boy was giggling and laughing with excitement. At least Carrie seemed to be having a great time. Both had their hands covered in gloves, with Carrie's gloves barely fitting. Still, he was helping the man push a huge trash can towards the truck. The man was explaining the function of the levers to Carrie. Dave paused, taking in this one-in-a-million interaction. Relief washed over his body, and he could breathe normally again. From the corner of his eye, Tucker approached with another garbage bin. The desperate father let out a sigh of relief. He was still confused about the whole situation, but when he saw Tucker, he knew his son was safe. Though he didn't know the man, it was clear to him that he would never harm a child. Tucker gave Carrie a high five as the little boy resisted going to him. They exchanged words for a minute, with Carrie's words bordering more on gibberish than actual meaning. The excitement of the little boy was evident, and in that moment, his father couldn't have been happier. His son could finally spend time with his hero, and he was clearly enjoying himself. The other garbage collector introduced himself as Elvis. He was Tucker's right-hand man. Every garbage truck needed 2 workers, and he was the second one. He knew Carrie just as well as Tucker, and the two of them wanted to surprise their favorite little child. Still amazed by the encounter, Dave finally took the time to get to know him and Tucker better. They were no longer just garbage men, but friends of his son. Dave couldn't stop thanking the men for their kindness. He was still looking for a moment to introduce Carrie to his new favorite friend. But the 2 garbage men had taken things to the next level. They had gone as far as to let him help, and had shown the little boy the love he had been missing lately. While Dave wanted to do the same, he couldn't due to professional reasons. But the 2 men weren't done yet. This yellow Lego was just one part of the set they had bought for him to show how much they valued his friendship. And the Legos were a representation of something much bigger. Elvis and Tucker had asked their boss if they could take Carrie and his father for a ride-along, so that the little boy could have the full experience.